On Sunday night, September 14th, 2008, something unusual happened at the Lehman Brothers headquarters on 7th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. Employees began arriving at the building, not because they had been called in, not because of an emergency announcement, but because they knew the way everyone inside the firm had known for days that something was ending. They carried boxes. They cleaned out their desks. They said goodbye to colleagues they had worked alongside for years, sometimes decades. The building was quiet in a way that trading floors are never quiet. By 4 in the morning on Monday, September 15th, it was official. Lehman Brothers Holdings, Incorporated. 164 years old, the fourth largest investment bank in the United States, with $613 billion in declared assets, had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was the largest bankruptcy filing in American history. When markets opened that Monday morning, the Dow Jones fell more than 500 points. Hundreds of billions of dollars evaporated from pension funds, mutual funds, and retirement accounts. Credit markets, the machinery through which companies borrow money to make payroll, buy inventory, and function, began to seize. The financial crisis of 2008, which had been building for 2 years, had just become something else entirely. Lehman Brothers had existed in various forms since 1844. Founded by German immigrant Henry Lehman as a dry goods store in Montgomery, Alabama, then expanded by his brothers Emanuel and Mayer into a commodities trading operation, then a financial firm, then one of the most powerful investment banks on Wall Street. In 1994, American Express spun Lehman off as an independent public company. Richard Fuld became CEO. He would hold that position for 14 years, the longest tenure of any major Wall Street bank CEO of his era. Fuld was known as the Gorilla. He was aggressive, loyalty-obsessed, and possessed of an absolute conviction that Lehman was not just a bank, but a family, his family. He had started there as a commercial paper trader in 1969. He had survived the firm's near-death experiences in the 70s and 80s. He knew Lehman's history the way a man knows his own biography. Under Fuld, Lehman grew at extraordinary speed. From 1994 to 2006, revenues grew 600% from $2.7 billion to $19.2 billion. The firm aggressively expanded into proprietary trading, derivatives, securitization, and real estate. By 2007, Lehman had more than $600 billion in assets. The problem was how that growth was financed. Lehman operated on extreme leverage, borrowing $30, sometimes $40 for every $1 of actual capital. This meant that in good times, the returns were spectacular, but it also meant that any significant decline in asset values would be catastrophic. And beginning in 2006, Lehman was making a very large bet on a market that was about to decline significantly: the American housing market. When other banks were beginning to reduce their mortgage exposure, Lehman doubled down. It acquired several subprime mortgage lenders. It built enormous positions in mortgage-backed securities. By early 2008, Lehman held more real estate-related assets than any other firm on Wall Street. As Lehman's mortgage positions began to lose value in 2007 and into 2008, the firm faced a growing crisis that it chose not to disclose publicly in full. Instead, Lehman deployed an accounting mechanism that its own employees called, informally, a gimmick. Its formal name was Repo 105. A repurchase agreement, a repo, is a standard financial instrument. A firm sells assets to a counterparty and agrees to repurchase them a few days later. It is, in effect, a short-term loan using the assets as collateral. For accounting purposes, this is treated as a borrowing, which it is. Repo 105 was different. Lehman sold assets at a 5% discount, hence the name, and argued that this discount was large enough to qualify the transaction not as a loan, but as a genuine sale. This allowed Lehman to remove the assets from its balance sheet entirely for the duration of the transaction, typically around the time quarterly financial reports were filed. The effect was dramatic. In the first and second quarters of 2008, Lehman used Repo 105 to remove approximately $50 billion of assets from its balance sheet at each quarter's end. This made its leverage ratios appear significantly healthier than they actually were. After the financial statements were published, the assets returned to the balance sheet. One Lehman executive, in an internal email, described Repo 105 as another drug we are on. The firm's president later told investigators that he had discussed the practice with Fuld directly. Fuld testified before Congress that he had absolutely no recollection of hearing anything about it. And by September 2008, Lehman's situation was critical and public. Its stock had fallen 77% in the first 2 weeks of the month. Credit default swaps on its debt, essentially insurance against its failure, were pricing in near certain collapse. The question was whether the government would intervene. 6 months earlier, in March, the Federal Reserve had facilitated a rescue of Bear Stearns, engineering an emergency sale to J.P. Morgan Chase and assuming $30 billion of Bear's worst assets to make the deal happen. Fuld and others at Lehman assumed they would receive similar treatment. They were wrong. Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson had been explicit. He was not going to provide another government backstop. The political cost of rescuing a second major bank, particularly after Bear Stearns, was too high. The word from the Treasury was unambiguous. The last weekend began on Friday, September 12th. Federal regulators gathered the CEOs of the major Wall Street banks in a conference room at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and told them to find a solution. Either someone buys Lehman or the firm fails. There will be no government money. 2 buyers emerged. Bank of America conducted due diligence over the weekend, but ultimately purchased Merrill Lynch. Instead, a decision made on Saturday, leaving Lehman with one potential rescuer. Barclays, the British bank, had been interested for months and sent teams to New York to examine Lehman's books. On Sunday morning, it appeared Barclays would do a deal. Then British regulators intervened. The Financial Services Authority refused to waive the rule requiring shareholder. Monday, September 15th, 2008, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy at 1:45 in the morning. 25,000 people went to work that morning, not knowing whether they still had jobs. Most did not. Over the following days and weeks, the vast majority of Lehman's workforce was laid off. The firm's global operations were carved up and sold. Barclays acquired the North American investment banking and capital markets operations for $1.35 billion, a fraction of what those businesses would have been worth a year earlier. Nomura purchased Lehman's Asian and European operations. The economic consequences spread far beyond the firm itself. The Dow Jones fell more than 500 points on September 15th. The following weeks brought a further cascade. Money market funds that held Lehman paper broke the buck, meaning their net asset values fell below $1, triggering a run on the entire money market industry. The commercial paper market froze. Companies that relied on short-term borrowing to make payroll found that credit was unavailable at any price. The government deployed the $700 billion TARP bailout. The Federal Reserve cut rates to near zero. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had already been nationalized. Within 6 weeks of Lehman's bankruptcy, the global financial system had required the largest government intervention in the history of peacetime finance. Richard Fuld testified before Congress in October 2008. A congressman asked him whether he took home approximately $480 million in compensation in the years before the firm's collapse. Fuld disputed the number. He said it was closer to $300 million. Independent analyses placed the figure closer to $529 million salary, bonuses, and share sales during his 14 years as CEO. No criminal charges were ever filed against Fuld or any other senior Lehman executive. Ernst & Young, the firm's auditor, settled civil claims related to Repo 105 inches 2015 for $99 million without admitting wrongdoing. Fuld opened a small advisory firm in Manhattan. He has given no significant public interviews since the collapse. Outro. The question that historians and economists still debate is whether the decision to let Lehman fail was the right one. Some argue that the government had no legal authority to provide a rescue, that the Fed's hands were tied without a willing buyer to backstop. Others argue that the decision was a political calculation that imposed catastrophic costs on the global economy. A few argue that allowing Lehman to fail despite the immediate destruction was the correct signal to send, that no firm would be rescued simply because it was large enough to cause damage. What is not debated